All right, I think we're live. I'm Joshua Kemble. Hang on a sec. My mic's all out of whack. Okay, cool. I think we're good. So I'm Joshua Kemble. This is my live stream where I basically work on usually book two of my graphic novel. I've been a professional artist for over 15 years. I'm on my seventh year of being an art director. And when I'm not working as an art director, graphic designer, and illustrator, I am plugging away at comics. So usually, what you'll see on this stream, this is the stream where I talk to people while I'm working on art projects, and I hope it can be kind of a community where people can kind of engage and make art and talk about stuff. Sometimes we talk politics, sometimes we talk religion. We tend to talk about a lot of topics you're not supposed to talk about. And a lot of the times we also just shoot the breeze and just kind of hang out. So, anyhow, if it's your first time watching, welcome. And what is my graphic novel? Two Stories, Book Two. Well, Book One is this book right here. It is a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. And so that should kind of get us up to speed. I'm going to move this mic a little closer so it's not quite as crazy. So, woohoo. Okay. So it's been a while since I've done a stream. What I'm working on today, though, is a little bit of an exception for people who've been watching recently on my vlogs or on my live streams. They're probably familiar with this project, but anybody tuning in for the first time may not be. So this is a 5-page pitch that I'm doing for my literary agent. It's a script that I really liked that my sister actually wrote, and it was so good that my lit agent picked her up as well to represent the book. And right now, all I have to do is basically finish the 5 pages so that I can get back to working on book two. Generally on this stream, I'll be working on like rough pencils, somewhat tight rough pencils. And it'll be interesting to kind of see how this goes because it's a little different. But like I said, it's page 5. All I have left are 2 panels, and then to color this page, and then I can get right back on to working on book 2. So let me have some coffee, and then we'll get into it. My friend Scott just informed me, Scott Cirkland of Cirkworks, that our guests tomorrow on Artcasters will be Russ Leach, which I'm really excited about. Let me just write epic. Okay, so I just let him know that I dug that. All right, so if you guys are watching, and feel free to chime in, let me know what you're working on. I'm going to be working on this page, and you'll notice the text is blotted out so that I'm not giving away any of the story. If anyone guesses what the story is about based on just the images alone, I don't know. I feel like they should get massive epic points for it. But anyhow, we're trying to kind of keep it exclusive for the for my literary agent. So I'm going to get going. My goal, this is the one I finished on Artcasters. Yesterday, I like hardcore failed. I usually try to do a panel a day, and yesterday was like the first time I hadn't, but it's because I was completely exhausted. We had a pretty busy weekend just doing a bunch of stuff. I had a friend in town from Seattle visiting. Actually, not Seattle. They'll kick me for saying that. They live in Gig Harbor. Oh, Mama Soto, you win a high five, a virtual high five. Hang on, let me use the side one. There you go. Virtual high five for being first here. It's Becoming the Night Gang. What are you working on, Mama Soto? So basically, we had a bunch of stuff. Like I had a friend in town, so Friday I had to go visit them, and then Saturday was my sister's birthday. Sunday we helped move my sister from her old place, and so that thus all the boxes behind us. And so it's just been like a crazy weekend, but actually like all good stuff, all like friends and family kind of stuff. But it's nice to get back to the art board. So I did manage to kind of keep at it, plug away and make comics, but at the same time I feel bad for like missing a day. Oh, and I got a virtual high five back. I feel very fortunate. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna get into it and draw this and just talk a little bit about stuff that's on my mind. And if you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about, let me know too. I have been working on a logo for ARC, Aphasia Recovery Connection org. That sounds awesome. It sounds like a nonprofit, which is actually, I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to remember what aphasia is. I'll have to, maybe you can let me know. But I do like doing work for nonprofits. I used to do a lot of stuff back when I was freelancing for the disabled American veterans at like a reduced rate, just because I really believed in what they were doing. And I feel like our country kind of has this tendency to like rush people to war, and then like we rarely kind of remember the people who like come back like from it. And so it's like it was my weird little art way to kind of do something good. And honestly, like the rates I would take work for were pretty low. Not that I didn't charge, but it's just they were unusually low for it because it was a cause I believed in. So this is like my little terrible way to give back. Let's see here. Oh, aphasia is being not able to communicate due to brain injury, typically stroke. Interesting. I just talked to a friend recently who was having, maybe that's what it's called, but he was having like some really bad blowback. Like he got COVID and it put him out for like a year. And he was experiencing like some pretty severe hallucinations, and like there were times where he'd like think something he wanted to communicate and it wouldn't come out. And like they said that it's actually like, from what he said that the doctors told him that that's actually sometimes a side effect of COVID. And so it lasted for about 6 months of him like kind of occasionally having hallucinations, and I guess it had to do with something like brain swelling, which is insane. So I wonder if that's aphasia. I don't know. So anyhow, on that light note, let's see. I've been dipping into. Yeah, right. I know, Mama Soto. It's crazy. It was a trip. I'm glad he's okay. Like he's starting to be able to communicate and like not see hallucinations, but it took him like, I don't think it was a whole year. I think it was more like 6 to 8 months, but it dragged for a long time. Imagine trying to go to work when you're like driving to work and it feels like you're driving on pillows. That's how you explained it. Like, cause the car would just kind of warp and stuff. I can't even imagine. Okay, so it's a stroke. Yeah, my grandpa had a couple strokes. That's rough. Sorry to hear about your dad having that too. That's got to be very difficult. I always find it really unsettling, just like how much of our perception is really just like these neurons firing. You know, it's like, and if anything goes wrong with like your synapses and stuff, it just kind of can warp your reality. It's, to me, that's one of the strangest things about like existence and stuff. So yeah, let's see. I mean, it definitely is one of those things that makes you realize like how fortunate we all are to like it, you know, I take this for granted too. I remember when my hand started like messing up last year, I was just in intense pain, um, to the point where it got kind of almost like debilitating. Like, and it was just shooting coming from my left hand right here, like right at the tendon or joint or whatever, of my thumb. And it just got to the point where it was just like such brutal pain. It was just like shooting pain to my brain. And to where I had trouble like focusing and just simple tasks. Like, luckily it wasn't my drawing hand, but because I work digitally a ton, especially at work, everything we do is on Illustrator or Photoshop. It was like anytime I'd hit an action, which, you know, anybody who does commercial art digitally, it's like you hit actions like every 10 seconds, you know, when you're making digital art. And anytime I do it, just this massive, like, it was like an electric shock just ran up my arm and shot like right to under my my shoulder blade and then just straight to my brain. It was brutal. And like that's a mild hand injury, but I remember until I got like a cortisone shot for it, it was just like so bad, and it made me realize like how often I take advantage of the fact that I have like all the stuff, all the functional, like all the functions of my hand. Yeah, that's a good question. It wasn't carpal tunnel. I thought it was initially. They initially thought it was, but it's just a repetitive motion injury. So it is a carpal injury, but it wasn't based on carpal tunnel syndrome. I don't know if that makes sense. Because it was still in the carpal, not the metacarpal. But yeah, that was fun. But anyhow, it's one of those things where it's like, as artists, we'll often just kind of like forget how fortunate we are to have all our faculties. Like, you know, we rely so much on hand movement and, you know, neurological health to do what we do. So like just realizing, like for me, just going through that and having a daily activity that I could usually do, that I rely on for what I do for a living, and also what I do for a hobby, and also guitar. Like I play guitar, and it's a passion of mine to play guitar, and just I had that taken away from me. Like I wasn't able to play for a good like 5 months because you have to use your thumb to kind of hold a chord on a neck of a guitar. So I couldn't hold a chord like I tried, and it would just create so much pain because, you know, the way you hold a chord, you have to press on the strings. And actually, it's funny when people are learning guitar, this is why like their fingers bleed and stuff, because you have to like really press on those strings. Even on a good guitar, you know, it's pretty bad, but like the amount of pressure you have to put. But on a bad guitar, you have to just like murder your hand to get a chord out. So anyhow, because of that, I had a moment where I was just like, well, maybe I won't be able to play guitar anymore. And I think my doctor was initially saying I may not be able to play guitar anymore, if like it recurs. And so like, luckily I haven't experienced pain again from a cortisone injection. Apparently if it comes back in about a year from now, or a year from when I got the shot, then I have to get like the tendon, like, or like something about the nerve just cut, which will limit the mobility of my hand. So that sucked, but it also made me realize like how often, I wasn't trying to go on a like dark subject there. It was more like, it just made me realize like how often we take for granted like the fact that like, you know, like every morning I wake up, I'm breathing, and like there's all these things that are functioning in my body that like I don't have to think to have work. They just work. And how fortunate it is, like, to have that, like in a weird way, from that perspective, it's like every day we have on this earth where we're functioning is like a blessing. Because it's like, I mean, I know it sounds like all corny and stuff, but it's like, I don't know. It just seems like a really good outlook on life where it's like, hey, like, even if um, things are tough, like, you can breathe without difficulty, or maybe you can move your hands without difficulty. Um, or even if you can't move your hands without difficulty, like, you can move your mind, like, you can think and think clearly without having like hallucinations, or like or like being able to communicate. Like, all of these things are just like super important and great. um let's see here. Oh, Adam, hey, how's it going, man? How are you doing? Are you still working on getting your comics made? Adam Lore, very good cartoonist and friend. Let's see here. Yeah, so Adam was saying I have some health issues that sometimes lead to paralysis type symptoms. That sucks. Yeah, it does. But the weird thing is, like I said, like the one nice thing that I've realized is like just kind of enjoying when those aren't moments. Like, I have to say, like, I've really enjoyed not, like, after the cortisone shot, like, even if it comes back, it's like I feel like I have enjoyed the time where I've been able to use my hand. Um, I've I actually need to get back into recording a few more songs, because that's just a little side project I'd like to do. And also, it's like an agreement I made with my buddy Kevin, that we would both do an album before the end of the year. Ironically, his will be super good and mine will be super sloppy and kind of clunky and indie and stuff, but it's still kind of fun, and I think like a fun challenge to kind of make it. But yeah, so I have to say I enjoy being able to play guitar, because it was only maybe like a month or two ago where I was able to do that again. So it was a good like 4 or 5 months where I couldn't touch my guitar. And just like, weirdly enough, it's like, I don't know, it's just like I guess I'm just talking in tropes and cliches tonight, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's important for us to enjoy things before they're gone, because they are really cool. Like, even eyesight is a real blessing. And so as long as we have eyesight, we should enjoy being able to kind of see. I don't know if that makes sense. I think I'm in a weird mood tonight, guys. Sorry. I'm just going to start getting into like heavy philosophy of beauty and stuff like that tonight. Probably not, but okay. Let's see here. And then Adam said, I've been writing lately. I'm going hopefully to get my other comics printed here. Hopefully ready to purchase sometime next month, depending how long it takes to ship printed copies. That is awesome. That is really awesome, Adam. So Deep Thoughts by Josh Kemble. Yeah, unfortunately, mine won't be as funny as Deep Thoughts, the bit on SNL, which was always great. Who was that comedian? You can probably tell me. He's really good. He's like a one-liner that, like, oh my gosh. Anyhow, he was very funny. I just can't remember his name because it's, I was going to say because it's super late, but for those of you in the night gang, 11:19, that's nothing. We go late. So I've been on this jam just kind of doing very microscopic stock transactions. like really small, just like dollar here, dollar there kind of things. And I'm kind of starting to dig it, but I have no idea if I know what I'm doing with it, and that might be a bad sign. But so far I've made like $20, and I started like maybe I think like 2 days ago or three. No, not 2 or 3 days ago. It was longer than that. I think about a week ago. On stocks, and that was kind of cool. But then again, from what I've learned from my very brief dip into this whole market thing, I guess that like unrealized gains, like I didn't even know that term, but I guess unrealized gains are like when you've gained something in the market, but you haven't realized them, which means just like your chips are still on the gambling board. Like they're not cashed out. I'm not explaining that because I think you guys don't understand that. I had never understood that term. So it's like if your chips are still there and you haven't cashed out, like in the stock market, I guess that's called unrealized gains. So like you're up, but you haven't cashed out, so it's not necessarily real. But so far, I have made $20 of unrealized gains. I'm going to kind of play with it for like a year and just kind of see if it's something that I'd want to do. And then if it's something like terrible, that's it. Thank you, Jack Handy. Thank you, Adam. I knew it. I knew you would have that info. Yeah, Jack Handy's so good too. He's very he would do one-liners that I think it's funny. I've read other comedians that were on SNL when he was on there, and a lot of like stand-ups and stuff like will look down on one-liners sometimes because they're kind of an easy shot. But Jack Handy used to take just this completely polar opposite direction with a one-liner where it would turn it on its head, and it would be so perfectly written that most stand-ups and comedians just thought of him as like one of the best one-liner comedians out there. Which is funny. I guess back in the day, Woody Allen started as a one-liner comedian. I didn't know that for a long time, that he was a stand-up. And now he's a little creepy, but need some good movies. Let's see here. His book, The Stench of Honolulu, is hilarious too. I have not read any of his books, and I feel bad because I had a roommate in college who was like really big on Jack Handy, which is why I was like feeling bad about blanking out on his name. And he used to quote his bits all the time and crack me up because, like I said, the guy just wrote one-liners that went in a direction you just wouldn't expect, but it's just so freaking funny. He would just take a one-liner and turn it on its head, go in a territory you wouldn't expect, but it just closes in such a perfect way. I'll have to check out some of his writing. But yeah, the Stench of Honolulu is like a good title for that represents his humor really well, because a lot of people would not associate stench with Honolulu. He does that really well, juxtaposing seemingly contradictory themes to make humor, which I think is good. That's kind of what we all should be striving to do in art, right? Like we juxtapose beauty and horror, sadness and happiness, humor and sorrow, all that fun stuff. And like I said, deep thoughts today, guys. Deep thoughts. That's cool though. So let's see. So Adam, you're gonna do a sci-fi magnum opus project? That sounds pretty cool. Do you know what direction you want to go with it? And are you ready for a magnum opus? I guess the question is anyone? I feel like 2 stories is kind of my magnum opus. Like, I hope that doesn't sound pretentious to say, but that's like, at least at this point in my life, like that's the story I've been wanting to tell for a long time. And man, the time it takes to make that is a beast. Okay, been looking to invest in one company, Hypnosis. Hip, is that hypnosis? Like, is that a okay? Explain that. I'm curious. Let me know all about it because, like I said, I'm doing these very, like I said, micro investments. So I'm not even buying full shares. I'm buying like 0.01% of shares. I think the biggest share I might have right now is like a 0.1%. But I am curious about anything interesting. The only music song management company. Huh. How does that work? You have to tell me about that. That's pretty interesting. I am not ready for a magnum opus, but I have smaller, more manageable project plans before leading up to it. But I have a lot of it planned out. Nice. I almost feel like the weird thing about a magnum opus, this is the thing that I wonder about. It's like before Maya and I had Ben, and Mama Soto, you might know this too as a parent, but it's like I remember we were kind of wanting, like, initially when we were first together, we were just like that couple that's like, we're never having kids. Like, kids are terrible, like pretty typical younger kids, like, which is funny because when I meet kids that are like that now, and I call them kids, but it's like, they're full grown adults, like 20-year-olds, 20, even early 30s. I'll meet people who are just like, I'm never having kids. And, um, I almost feel like the people that are the most vocal about that probably at some point are going to have kids because I was like one of the more vocal people who was just like, why would anyone have kids? And then so Maya and I like both kind of were on the same page with that. And then like this weird thing happened. It was like, you know, uh, about 7.5, maybe 8 years ago. We just were like, I don't know, like we got to know her nephew better, and he's really rad, and I had a lot of fun with him, and realized like, hey, he enjoys hanging out with me too. Like I'm not terrible with kids. I always thought I was terrible with kids, and then we just like changed our mind about it, and then it became like okay, we're gonna have kids, but we'll wait till we have all the money and the resources, and I'm in a better position, like career wise, and you're in a better position. And we were like kind of justifying all of that. Believe me, this will tie into the magnum opus thing in a second. um but yeah, so it's like we ended up deciding we wanted a kid, and then it was just a matter of like, well, we'll be ready when. And then I remember it was like a year after doing the we'll be ready when's, we did the math and we realized like there's really never going to be a point where we're ready. Like I don't think any parents would have kids if they felt like we have to be fully ready. I mean, you definitely want to be irresponsible. Responsible. Did I say irresponsible? You want to be responsible, but the people have been having kids for ages, and managing to make it work. It's just this weird thing in humanity where you just kind of have to, like, I don't know. Sometimes you're going to get to that precipice of like, okay, well, when, like, I'll do this when, and face whether it's a delay of something that may never happen if it just continually gets delayed, or if it's a delay that's like caused by like rationality. And like both can be rational. Like if people wait to have kids for when they're ready, they probably just aren't going to have kids. And that's a possibility too. but if you like wait a little bit, or don't jump in without like any sort of support system around you or something, like, yeah, that may not be smart. But there is a point where you just kind of have to, like, in a weird way, it's like it's like a point of faith where you have to just kind of step out and just kind of go, okay, I guess we're going to have a kid. Let's try for it. And then you just kind of deal with it as it comes. And when my son was first born, I was like adjuncting and freelancing, and it was really hard because it's like you're teaching college classes, which, are like, when you adjunct, it's not like the best pay. And that's not why anyone teaches anyway. That's not why I was teaching. It's not like you teach college to get rich, but anyhow, it was really hard to sustain because it was just like, I just can't do this and take care of this kid. Like, I have to have like a bigger income to make this work. So then I just found a better income. I like that partially motivated me to take the gig as an art director, which did not come easy either. There were quite a few positions that I tried for before that just kind of didn't work out. And weirdly enough, had I not chosen to have a kid, I may not have actually ever realized or taken the shot at becoming an art director, which I was fully qualified to do at the time. But I don't think I would have done the math and realized, like, throughout my life, the amount of experience that I've gathered to where I could actually sit in an interview and without BSing be like, yeah, I can art direct. Like, I've dealt with prints, dealt with leading artists. I know the fundamentals of graphic design. I know the fundamentals of illustration, all of that. But like, I don't know if I would have done that had we not taken that one jump and just decided to have a kid because it's something we wanted in our lives. And the big breaking point for us was just realizing, like, hey, if we don't do it, we're like literally never going to do it. We're never going to have a kid. Because there's a window, right, with that. So anyhow, tying that back, I know that was long-winded, to the magnum opus. I think sometimes it makes sense to wait and plan for your magnum opus. And then sometimes you just have to, like, put on a 4-track and track your album, and who knows, you might actually end up making, one of those like incendiary first albums that, rocks the world. Or it might just be a bad album, but at least you made an album. You know what I mean? So that's what I debate all the time. Because Two Stories, I think I was ready because I had experimented. I had tried. I had made a graphic novel before and learned a lot of important lessons from it. But at some point I was just like, kind of like, I just have to try to make the thing I'm supposed to make now. And that's how it got done. But going a route that's more planned might have shaved off a couple of years from the execution of it, because it took like 5 years to do. That's a good point. Oh my goodness. What just happened here? I think I have it. Okay. It just did that weird zoom thing on my screen where sometimes if I hit a shortcut on Photoshop, it affects my browser. Yeah, so Mama Soto was saying, kind of like people who say they never want a dog and then they get one and fall in love. I feel like it's kind of like that. I don't know. Not saying Adam. I think if you want to do a shorter project first, it's a smart idea just to like get warmed up. But I am saying, like, as long as it's not just like a delay tactic to kind of keep the magnum opus from getting done. And sometimes it's just not the right time in life to like make your magnum opus, Does anyone know, out of curiosity, what magnum opus means? I feel like that's something I should know, and I actually don't. I would imagine it means big song? I don't know. What's opus? Any of you guys who have, let's see here. Anyhow, any of you guys want to chime in, let me know. This is kind of a weird part of this pitch. They've been at this weird seance. A giant floating, glowing hand appears, picks up a wreath from the table, and places it upon her head in a very creepy-like fashion. That's the official term for it. Music stuff. Music stuff is the best. Okay. Let's see here. So yesterday, I feel like, once again, I usually am pretty regimented and good with my art schedule, but it was just one of those days where I totally failed. Like, I was supposed to work out. I didn't work out. I was supposed to work on a panel. I didn't work on a panel. I did get art to a client. That's about all I did. It was definitely one of those mass failures. Yeah. So anyhow, fine art stuff, actually. Yes. But yeah, it feels good to get back. But it is funny, like when you build like a really good momentum and habit, like for me, like I have to be really regimented with my habits. And some people I know aren't like that. Like they can kind of have like a day off and it doesn't like throw them for a loop. But for me, even now, it's like I luckily have built the habit of working on these every night for the past few weeks, at least on these pitch pages. And then I usually, as you guys know on the live streams, I usually try to do about a page a day of thumbnails for book 2. And I'm pretty close to done on that. But what's interesting is I feel like if I lose lose a day, it very quickly becomes a longer time lost. Like I have to kind of stay regimented in order to get anything done. And I think it's because I'm a bit of a creature of habit. So it's like if I build really good habits, like working out, like I keep with it, I tend to keep with it. But the second I take like a day out, it very quickly can become like a week or a month or a year. And yeah, so anyhow, needless to say, as corny as it is, I feel good about myself that today I managed to overcome like the resistance that I felt approaching doing this stream. Like I love doing these streams, but it's like right before doing the stream, I was like, well, I could just crash. Like I could use the extra sleep, you know? And I'm like, nope, I'm going to do this. 2 panels left. Try to motivate myself with that. Like where it's like, you're almost there, you know, like you have to, I don't know. Anyhow. So that might sound crazy, but that's kind of my process a little bit where it's like, I've found that I just don't work well with like a, haphazard schedule. Like I have to plan things out and be consistent. And then when I can do that, I'm like really productive. But if I break the chain, I just lose all productivity. And I don't know, Adam might relate to this too, but it's like, I also think partially the slightly autistic part of me is like more like, I can also very quickly get sidetracked on a totally different thing if I lose that. Like for me, you know, being consistent with my workout, that's good. And it literally is every other day I do a specific workout. I kind of add weight to it here and there. But it's like in general around the same time, same day, I do that. If I skip it for like enough days, I might suddenly get super micro focused on something else. and like, and it's yeah. Anyhow, so that that kind of freaks me out. The fact that I have to have these rigid schedules. Adam said, I know that a lot of artists are against the idea of doing a magnum opus, but I'm not just putting it off. I'm working on scripting, concept art, rough layouts, etc. beforehand. Yes, that's good. I'm glad you're carving it out. Because I think putting it off would be the mistake. I want to see more artists fail beautifully if they fail or succeed, but like I'd rather see something like an ambitious I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like worst case of like trying to tackle, hey, Gary's here. How's it going, Gary? What keeps you up tonight? Yeah, I almost feel like a noble failure. Not that a magnum opus will be a failure, but like I think that is one of the things that keeps people from doing a magnum opus is they're like afraid of like, well, what if it fails? And it's like I would rather see an epic failure than like a comfortable, safe, squeaking by okay piece of art. Like to me, I think it's better to make the thing that like you're attempting greatness and maybe failing at it than like a successful like mediocre piece of art. Gary says he's up plotting tomorrow's doodle a day. Nice. I love it. Well, I am trying to get this panel knocked out and having minimal success with it. It's getting there. All right. What can you give a spoiler, Gary, an exclusive of what you're planning on for that doodle a day? Kind of curious. Also, Gary, if you want to, I'm probably only going to be on for like maybe another hour, I'm guessing, at the most. But if you want to hop on, you are welcome. I can send you a link. Chat it up. Adam as well. You guys are. However, I also get it if it's like one of those things where you're in a zone, kind of working on your thing. All right, so let's see here. But just let me know if you're down. I'll send you a link. So I'm doing this hair business. So yeah. Anyhow, my point is, I think people should aspire to do the thing they feel most driven to do. So sometimes delaying is not good. Sometimes waiting is good. Like I think. But I always think of like Jeff Smith. Prompt is sorry, here's Gary. The prompt is candles, which is less than inspiring. As I've told people before, when I don't have an idea, I default to either video games or mythology. Interesting. So this time it's the latter. I like it. This is going to be weird thinking about candles, Gary. I'm going to go on a rant about candles because I am a nerd. So I don't know if you guys had an NES back in the day, but I had an NES, and I'm sure you probably did. Gary, you must have had an NES back in the day. We're of a similar generation. Let's see. Ooh, Orpheus and Eudris is my favorite. Oh, perfect. Okay. I'm gonna give Gary a rant about candles, but first I'm gonna give him a link to hop on the stream. Hold on a second. Let's see, Gary. Boom. Link is sent, sir. All right. So while Gary is hopping on, actually, I kind of want to wait on the candles bit. Okay, Mama Soto, what is Orpheus and Eurydice? Or is Orpheus... Okay, so here's my nerdiness. I think of Orpheus as Morpheus. Like, I'm getting him confused with Orpheus, I think. Because Morpheus is like, you know, the Sandman in Neil Gaiman's thing. So this is like my either tiredness or lack of knowledge. Eurydice. Oh, Eurydice. Okay. Thank you for helping me pronounce that. I feel like this stream sometimes can be like the Josh's lack of education stream, but I don't mind. I'm kind of curious though. I want to hear. Can you break down the myth to like a small bit of what it is about? And strangely enough, like when you talk about it, it might bring back a little bit of memories of it. I will say, like I went through like a phase of like some mythology, and then since then, once Gary's on to remind me to talk about candles, because I don't want to forget that candle rant. It's pretty amazing, and it talks about original old school Nintendo. So, okay, Eurydice. Love it. Okay, I feel like that's familiar though. I also really feel like I need to brush up on the stuff. Oh, Adam, thank you for picking that up. When Jeff Smith started Bone One, he had already worked on his comic strip vision. Yes. Yes, that's exactly where I was going to go with that tangent that I didn't follow about Jeff Smith. So when Jeff Smith started Bone, yeah, he like was doing it, I think, for his like college newspaper or something. And so it's like, if you look at the original versions of Bone, like a lot of the story was still there, but the art was still kind of, but my point is, he didn't wait to start his magnum opus, so why should you? But I'm glad you're not waiting, so that's cool. Okay, how goes it, Gary Hodges?
Hey, how are you doing?
All right, I'm doing all right. Yes, so okay, Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Everyone should go get it on Etsy. Gary Hodges is like a mixture between the X-Files. I'm going to quote Scott Serkland. A mixture between the X-Files and Tarantino. So, yes.
There you go.
All right. So, candles.
Candles.
Okay.
NES era.
Yes. So you had an NES, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So there was this game, and I'm going to botch the name of it most likely, but I think it was called The Adventures at Disneyland, or it was like The Adventures in the Magic Kingdom.
Wait
a second. I'm going to have to Google it now. What was that called?
Was it the Mickey Mouse one?
No. It was like you literally, dude. Yes. Okay. It was called Adventures in the Magic Kingdom. Okay. So this was an NES game.
Okay.
Where you actually are walking around Disneyland, and you have to go on different rides and kind of beat them in order to like collect. I forget what the goal was. It's been a long time. I bet it's online. Like, I bet there's probably
on the original. I gotta look it up right now.
Yeah, it was on NES. And so anyhow, the candles thing makes me think, because you were mentioning video games, and I'm like, the prompt of video games and candles, there was a level on it that was Pirates of the Caribbean, where you had to run through and you like threw candles at people.
What?
Yeah, it was awesome. Or maybe it wasn't Pirates.
I'm looking at it right now,
Yeah.
and I think of myself as quite the retro video game nerd.
Yeah.
I am astonished. I feel like I've never heard of this game.
Yeah, I was obsessed with it, and it's funny because I even remember the Star Tours level was so not Star Tours because it was like it predated Star
Probably
Tours.
Space Mountain, right?
Space Mountain level was so hard that I would have my sister play it. That's the only level because she was really good at like fast moving racing kind of stuff.
This is amazing. I'm gonna download this immediately.
Yeah, dude, there's a Haunted Mansion level. There was and you'll have to remind me because I don't remember off the bat if the candle throwing was on Haunted Mansion, which would make more sense, or if it was on Pirates. But I think it was actually on the Pirates game where you threw candles at people.
It's saying per Wikipedia, it's saying it's the Haunted Mansion stage.
Okay.
The player has to defeat ghosts by throwing candles at them.
That was it. So that would have been where I would have gone with the prompt.
What's also crazy about this, if I had ever played this game, what's also weird is it's by Capcom, which is like my all-time favorite developer. So I'm sitting here stunned that I never knew about this game, so I got it.
It was great too because it had like some deep cut trivia too, where it would like it would be like, what was the first Disney cartoon? And then you'd have to like kind of answer it correctly. I think it was Silly Symphonies, but it's like, and then which was the first Mickey Mouse cartoon? And you're like, oh, Plane Crazy. But of course, at first when I got it, I was like, it's Steamboat Willie, and then it was like, wrong,
right?
Plane Crazy. But it was cool. It was funny. You could like go around. I think there were a couple people at the park where they'd like, very Final Fantasy 1 style, just be like, hello, I'm going to say the same thing.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, I mean, I remember it was a lot of fun. I wouldn't mind playing it again. I wish that was on my little NES emulator.
I'm trying to, let's see here. Come on.
Resident Evil was on Capcom? Mama Soto was
original Nintendo had sort of the spiritual, what was it, Sweet Home, I think it was called? Which was kind of like the earliest idea of Resident Evil.
Got it. Yeah, I have some weird deep cuts because I was a strange kid. So like a lot of people were really into a lot of very popular games at the time, and then I'd be like, let's play Adventures in the Magic Kingdom, and they're like, yeah, I don't really want to.
Yeah, that's not edgy and cool, but like that's not, yeah.
Another one I was really obsessed with that would be a fun one to look into if you're like a nerd. I might have mentioned this to you before, but there's one called Deja Vu.
Yes, that one I do have.
That one is excellent, where it's like great. And as a kid, I remember when I first figured out like some of the tricks, like there's a certain capsule that you have to like put phenobarbital through or something. And then finally like that revives I don't know if it's phenobarbital, but it's some weird, thing that you have to like mix in a capsule and then like break the capsule and do it in a certain way so that you can recover your memory. But it's one of those games where it's like, the capsules you get at the very beginning of the game, they're in like a trash can. And if you like discard the capsule that you get like, then you're screwed for like the rest of the game. There's a bunch of stuff like that in that game.
Always. There were so many game design. They had very different ideas back then. It was,
I feel like it was a little better in some ways and then some ways not.
Right. No, I some of it I like. Well, I feel like now it's very oriented towards, I don't know. I think a lot of video games are kind of like rides. It's like an experience.
Yeah.
And where Oh, I mean, I feel 1,000-year-old saying this, but when I was a kid,
I feel that way about video games, though, for sure.
video games were like, it was a game. It was a challenge. Like, you had to get good at it. There were win and loss states. Like, I mean, was the whole idea. Where now I feel like it is very much, it's like I don't know, it's sort of a participatory movie of some kind, or like something, I don't know. It's not all, and I certainly multiplayer games aren't like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I had a moment. So my friend was in town from he lives in Gig Harbor in Washington, and he was just visiting, and so I went and hung out, and in a socially distanced manner, but we ended up playing an NES game, and not an NES game, like a modern video game. And it was like Madden or something like that, but like the equivalent of that now. And I used to be pretty good at those like football games on I think the last system I was really good at was like Super Nintendo. And they were fun. You just talk crap and like play a sports game even though you're not a sports person, you know. And now it's like I literally can't. I realized I'm totally an old man because I realized like my response to trying to play a modern video game with a modern controller, because I don't game, was like equivalent to like my dad's response to trying to play an NES game and being like, I just don't.
Right.
Because I like literally couldn't figure out. I'm like, I can't figure out what buttons to press. There's too many buttons. There's like 50 billion buttons, and I accidentally pressed the left thing, and I actually have aged out and become unfamiliar with video games, which I know is lame, but
I've gotten to the point where I still love games and I still play them a lot, but if it is just a little too complex, if it requires me to learn a little too much, if it requires me to remember a lot of things, like I can't. Like I don't have that kind of concentration I had like in grade school and high school and even college, where I can, you know, shave my head and learn the mysteries of a video game. Like I can't do it anymore. If I can't grasp it very quickly and feel like, okay, I get it, I sort of understand. And it doesn't matter how long it is. Like I'll sit and play the same game for weeks, but I need to really kind of feel like I'm grasping it in the first couple play sessions. Nothing's going to turn me off like playing 15 hours and then they reveal like, oh, let's show you how to make new weapons with these items you've been finding. Like it's like, no, I don't want to learn anything more. I don't want to I don't want to have to study. I don't want to have to look at like a guide. No. Just let me, like, I should be able to just jump in and play. So
yeah, I'm like a bit of an addictive personality, so it's like I have to really regulate myself when it comes to video games. So I haven't owned a gaming system other than my little NES emulator for like, man, over a decade. Because I just like, I don't know. I find like I don't know. I like to limit my options so that I'm forced to cartoon.
I understand. Yeah,
But I get it because game playing is really fun and it's cool, and it is like I do feel like I miss out on a little bit of like one of the biggest forms of entertainment around, you know. You know, which is pretty cool. But anytime I feel like that, I'll just like rebeat Final Fantasy 1, and then I'll be like, okay, that was a time suck. I'm good.
Yeah, I kind of hop back and forth between playing old ones that I've played 1,000 times and some new thing. Like I did pre-order the latest Resident Evil. It's funny that Resident Evil came up. I just thought about that. There's a new Resident Evil coming out in about a week or something.
Yeah.
And I have pre-ordered that one. And then that will probably be like one of maybe 2 or 3 brand new big deal games like I'll play this year, you know, but usually it's more like I'll play through Bionic Commando on the Nintendo again, or I'm going to go through Legend of Zelda again, or something like that, you know, and like that scratches my itch and I feel good about it. And it's fun.
Nice. Hey Jan, how's it going? Jan was saying he's recommending I get a Nintendo Switch, which I have heard from a lot of people that the type of gameplay that I tend to prefer would probably be more Nintendo Switch-ish.
The Switch is a lot of fun.
I do. Okay, so I have played. I'm forgetting what it's called. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting what it's called. It's so good. It's oh man, this is horrible. There's a lawyer game. You'll know just for me saying a lawyer
Phoenix
game.
Wright.
So yes, Phoenix Wright.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is an excellent game.
It's a lot of fun.
I will say, I mean, it's very corny, but it's so good.
Silly. Yeah.
It's so good. Objection.
But that's a good example of a game where it's like you understand the whole thing like very quickly, and it's just more of that, you know, and it gets more complicated, but it's basically like all the basic principles are there, and you know what you're doing.
Yeah, there was a period in time where I would, you know, like this is when I lived in Oregon, but I would get like the bug to play a video game. And so I actually started just pretty much being obsessed with anything Telltale Games would put out, because they're just point and click story games, but the stories were so well produced.
Mm-hmm.
I just like thought they were really fun and engrossing, even though they were very simple. And that shows you just how old and ridiculous I am when it comes to games. I like Telltale Games. Like I thought they were great. There was a Back to the Future one that was so good.
I've been going back to a lot of the trying to arrange my workspace here. I've been going back to some of the old point and click ones, like Secret of Monkey Island.
Oh yeah,
like just kind of those like very understand. You know, I don't know. I've played through them all, but it's been long enough where I don't really remember the specifics.
Yeah,
so
I love Secret of Monkey Island, but
so good and it's funny. Like I don't know if anyone else, but like it still holds up as really funny, really funny writing.
Yeah, I feel like that's some good stuff, man. Secret of Monkey Island. That was a fun series, weirdly enough.
It was, yeah. And the other one, I wish they would port it to modern stuff, but there was a very similar thing called Hero's Quest. It was basically the same thing, but instead of like this pirate thing, they were doing orcs and knights and dragons and that kind of thing. But it was the same kind of tone and the same kind of idea. Like you're this guy who wants to become a hero and you're going to go out, and it was the same thing. And also I thought really funny and fun to play.
Huh. And what was that? Like what was that on? That was another PC game?
That would have been another PC thing, yeah.
Nice. I feel like that sounds pretty familiar.
Hero's Quest, you might have played it, and then I don't know. I know they reported Secret of Monkey Island to everything a few years ago. I don't know if it's on the Switch or not. I know I have it on my Xbox. So.
Oh man, huh? Well, at some point, I don't know, maybe near retirement. If I ever retire.
When you're not worried about wasting time.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is I don't know if cartoonists ever retire.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, you know, if tomorrow, like I retired from my day job, I would be working endlessly on comics. But then again, maybe at that point your hand just stops working, and then you're like, well, but then
yeah,
you're screwed because you totally can't play video games.
Yeah, that's true. This is how I rationalize it, and it's probably a better rationalization for reading books and watching movies or going to galleries, but I'm throwing video games in there too. I don't know about you. I find that one of the best ways to refill my creative tank is to expose myself to stuff.
Yeah,
like I could sit and be like a monk and create every free minute of my life, just, you know, draw and write. And I do start to feel like there's either an energy or even like an idea well that starts to run dry. And unless I'm replenishing with like a new album or seeing a movie I've never seen before or reading something I'd never, like I feel like I need that kind of constant drip of like new creativity from something. And
I totally agree.
Yeah, so that's how I rationalize, like, well, Resident Evil, I don't know, maybe I'll get a weird idea from it. Who knows? And that's,
That's part of why I've been really enjoying the indie review show is like, it's just like a way to kind of force myself to like read comics.
yes.
I will say I have no idea if we're going to do it on Monday because Corey is now not a new father, but he's a father of another child.
A father again.
A healthy baby. So, but because of that, like, I will not be surprised if we have to push.
Yeah, that seems fair. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually, last time I looked at the website, it didn't even look like it was scheduled out. Like, I don't know what's next.
So. Yeah, I would guess that may be that way for a few weeks at minimum.
Sure.
So we'll see how that rolls out. But I do love that as like a template to kind of force myself to analytically read work that I've already read, which is like something I always forget to do. I like everyone else, like enjoy new stuff, and so it's like I'll forget the really good old stuff sometimes. And so it's a nice way to remember. I forgot to get rid of this gigantic brand for a second there. Okay.
Oh, it's nice once in a while to make yourself sit down with something. Like if I could take this camera on the move, if it was cordless, I've got a pile of just books to read sitting on my coffee table.
Nice.
That like, and some of those have been sitting there for months.
Yeah.
And it's just, but if it was a thing where it was like, if I was in a book club or something, and it's like, well, we're talking about it in 2 weeks, I would read it, but when there's no real deadline and the only person who's going to make me do it is myself, like it just sits there. So.
Dude, I 100% get that. Let's see. He just said, oh, did I hear you had a new baby? No, that's Corey. Corey had a new baby. Yeah. Right?
I'm almost I did play Myst. I never played Ribbon.
I love it.
And Myst, it was very like Shadowgate, Deja Vu-y, like that type of game.
Nice. That's good advice to your kid too. Yeah, you definitely have to feed the creative tank. It's one of the reasons, like, when like I have a friend in town from Gig Harbor, I'm like, I'm gonna go hang out, have some drinks, and enjoy seeing a friend, because it's like that's the stuff that feeds. If you like forget your connection to humanity, you can kind of like lose the drive, or like just the connection to like the people you're writing for in the first place,
Yeah.
And then you might end up going down the weird late in life Ditko rabbit hole where you're writing comics.
Yeah.
Well, I feel bad about it, but I feel like some of the comics he was writing later in life were very disconnected from any audience. And I'm all for making art for art's sake, but you gotta not lose total connection,
It's tough. I mean, I don't know though. I kind of feel like it's so hard for me to even imagine like what my audience is and what they would want and all of that. That generally I tend to just write the story I would be interested in reading and draw it the way that I think looks cool, and just hope, you just cross your fingers and hope like, well, I can't be the only person in 7 billion.
Yeah.
Who's going to love this. Like, yeah, you just got to hope like I'll find however many others of me are out there, and so.
For sure. Yeah. I think I approach it the same way. It's just weird because it's like you still bother to kind of craft it and take the time to try to tell it well so that it's decipherable.
Yeah.
Outside of, your own, it's like this fine line, where it's like you can, I don't know. Because it's like, I think there is a point where you can almost lose touch with the idea of anyone reading it. And that's where it could get kind of weird. Where it's like, it's important to like keep in mind, like, even if you're writing it, and like, because I have a similar approach. Like, I have no idea half the time who my audience is.
Yeah, I don't.
And I'm not like trying to gear it towards any audience, because like, frankly, I feel like that would just make me feel constrained, and then the art would be really dishonest, But at the same time, I am thinking of an audience. Like, I'm not gearing it like commercially or anything, but I am thinking about, like, is this going to be a decipherable, clear story that has like a clear beginning, middle, and end? Like, is it going to tie off all, like, am I going to try to tie a lot of the threads that I'm creating, like, narratively?
Yeah.
And some of that's for me, but a lot of that's like mainly for the idea of someone reading it. It's like, I think if you went down the train of just like drawing kind of whatever you felt like in a comic, and then I don't know, that could almost be cool though. See, now
it can be. I mean, it's such a weird thing. Like, everyone tells everybody to just sort of do what feels right to you as an artist, and try and tune out the audience, and try and be true to yourself, and blah blah blah, all that stuff. I think though, what's not talked about as much, and then maybe probably for obvious reasons, is like, that is the way you should approach it, but then it all kind of hinges on your skill and your talent and the quality of your taste. Like, you can be totally true to yourself, but the sad fact of farming is, if you have trash ideas and not a particularly good eye, and you're not very good at executing, that's not going to be the path to success. But it's hard to, like, I guess maybe the easier thing to talk about is like, well, trust yourself and do the thing that you think is right. Because you can't really tell someone, like, be good. Like, that's like, I'm trying. Everyone's trying, I think. Like, most of us are out there trying to be good.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. Yeah, it's hard with the aesthetic eye thing, because that's something you kind of learn. Like, it's weird, but like, there's art that I see once I was formally trained in art, that like, I don't know if I would have had an appreciation for or understood why it was good without the appreciation in the eye, and the idea of like practicing with the formal elements of art, where it's like, once you start kind of doing life drawing a lot, it's like you start really appreciating certain artists that you may not have appreciated as much before, and then once you start playing with like 2D design and like abstraction and stuff like that, like, you might appreciate some artists, and some artists that you might have thought like were geniuses at 2D design, you might find really divisive, and not divisive, but formulaic and kind of simple. But a lot of people outside might be like, this is profound. I remember that, having that experience, and this one always pisses off people who don't paint. Some people who paint, but it's like, so I really liked Dali, and then I remember when I learned life painting and color comparison, like, especially when you're doing wet on wet painting in the way that like the Impressionists did, and a lot of formal painters, like you actually had Rembrandt, like, later in his life, like at the beginning of his life, he's painting with like fan brushes and like all this stuff, so it's all smooth. And as it got later in life and he got better at painting, he started painting with like flat brushes and just globs of color, and just kind of carving the form with wet on wet, and not like overworking it. And so that technique, like, there's a technique to that, and it's this color comparison theory thing where you kind of start and you look at like the lightest objects, like, and then the darkest object, and you kind of map those out, you mix those colors, and then you're looking at color and you're going, okay, is it lighter or darker in comparison to the lightest color, right? And you're asking these questions in comparison to the lightest color and the darkest color. Is it warmer or cooler? right? And what color is it? So those 3 questions, and you just kind of go through that, and you end up with this painting that's like super color accurate, like as you get the hang of it, you know.
Oh.
Usually with a limited palette, you know, like 16 colors, something like that. But you start learning that and learning like color and shadow and stuff like that, and then you look at a Dali painting and you're like, ugh, like the color's so bad. Like,
Right.
they're really
Right.
cool and abstract
Sure.
and great, and I still love them. But it's like, you know, when you hear people go, that was one of the greatest painters, you're like, I don't know, was he?
Right.
It's one of those weird things that just kind of, I know that's weird to say, but it's like, I wouldn't have known to like, like, don't get me wrong, his compositions were cool, the ideas were cool, but like a master of color, he was not, you know?
Right. Sure.
And then you look at like Cezanne, who like you might have just been like, meh, and then you're like, holy crap. Like, it's just because the color use and like the knowledge of color theory, it's like just on display. So it's my point of bringing that up isn't to be like snooty or anything, because people can like anybody they like. But it's just weird because it's like, I do think some taste develops through action, you know? I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
like
it
through
does.
the action
It
of
totally
doing it.
makes sense. It's actually, I don't know. To me, it's adjacent to a shower thought I had today. I was thinking about Charlie Burns in the shower. That sounds really weird, but I was thinking about Black Hole because you guys had just done it, and I was thinking about his feathering and like his ridiculous, just absurd technique.
Yeah,
like just the insanity of it.
it
And
kills me every time.
Kills me every time. But I was wondering to myself, I don't know how, I think actually I came around to it. What I was thinking about was all the times in my art career, I made choices, whether it was colors or how to do something or whatever, that were sort of inside baseball, that it was sort of for like, other artists are really going to appreciate this, or I'm going to be very impressed with myself if this is my logic for choosing these colors, or this is why I'm doing it this way, or this is the piece I'm referencing that no one will know, but I know I'm referencing this other thing, you know?
Yeah.
I was wondering if, and this isn't a rhetorical, like this isn't me like being provocative asking the question because I know the answer. I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
I'm beginning
it's
to
just a
wonder,
literal
like,
question.
does that really have a value? Like if someone, if the audience, you're like, you know, I love Black Hole.
Yeah.
But if part of what is noteworthy or if the accomplishment of Black Hole is the technique and having to be an artist to recognize how difficult what he did is, you know, is that
relevant?
Yeah, does that have value? You know, and like I think about, there's this artist I got way into when I was way edgier, Joe Coleman. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
maybe this will be another indie review show.
I don't think he's ever done. He did paintings. He does paintings. You should Google him. His work is crazy. First of all, it's insanely technically well done, but it's grotesque and weird. But his whole idea was like he would do these giant canvases that were sort of biographical. He would pick somebody, whoever, some famous character, and just do this giant canvas, almost like a weirdo illuminated manuscript, or like a giant portrait, and all these little images, biographical story images that would kind of go around the outside of it. He would write all these little messages, but they were insanely detailed to the point where the story is that his brush has a single sable strand on it. That's how like tiny he was working.
Oh, okay.
And it would take him forever to do these. And when you saw them, they were insanely detailed and crazy, visually dense and sophisticated. You can tell. But I was thinking of Joe Coleman, where I was like, to me, it's kind of like painting The Last Supper on a matchstick. Like, part of me is like, wow, that's very impressive because I'm an artist.
Yeah.
But there's another part of me that's like, who the fuck cares? Like, you know, this is like, This
Speaking
is a
of,
cold
sorry,
shot. This is a stunt. Like
I have to tack this on because
Okay.
there is a place called the Museum of Jurassic Technology. It's one of the weirdest little like curios in Los Angeles. It's just a strange like it's an unlabeled like museum
yes,
in LA. You have to look up directions to it. It's great.
I've heard of it. I've never been there.
And then half the museum is like welded together Airstream trailers in the back. But they have an exhibit of all these like tiny paintings that were done on a human hair.
See,
Like now that is so absurd and yet so awesome, but it's very like it's like a Barnum kind of thing where the impressive part is the technique. I think
so just an example, I have my Joel Coleman book handy. I noticed. I don't know how well this will show on the camera, but the cover. Here, let me see.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
If you see,
so
like,
cool.
now this would have been massive, like a massive, massive canvas. But you see, as you get closer and closer, like the crazy. This was, I think, a self-portrait.
Oh, that's so rad.
Weird, and he'll like he'll write. He'll tell like stories like, I don't know, he broke his wrist or something. He wrote like a little story about it. Like this, it'll be this massive wall-sized canvas where he's doing all this crazy stuff.
I kind of dig that.
Yeah, I was for a while. I was like, Joe Coleman is awesome. So Mama Soda, that's the story. Is that some of the fine detail? He has a one-strand brush, and that's why it takes him 1,000 years, and it has like a kind of a look. But again, yeah, I'm like wondering.
Is it worth it?
At what point is it a carnival stunt? And at what point is it like art that is for artists?
Okay, so I'll answer that in a second. James was letting you know that Heroes Quest is on GOG for Windows XP, Windows 7. They had to retitle the series Quest for Glory because of a trademark conflict.
I guess I can. I'm a Mac user.
Yeah, me too.
I guess I can look into. Is it like Parallels? That's or something?
That's like telling a gamer that you're not really a gamer.
I know. I'm a console gamer. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm pretty.
I like the simplicity. I'm very geeky in many other ways, but when it comes to that stuff, it's like, no, I just want a box that's made. That's
I also
Ronnie, how's it going?
I also tend to like the idea of being a Mac. Well, I like being a Mac user. I'm used to being a Mac user, and every time I try to use Windows, or I've even thought about like switching over, it just becomes a frustrating experience. And like, I know it's nerdy, but even just the difference of the shortcut key just drives me nuts. So I will stick loyally to Mac until they completely ruin their computers,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But on a design standpoint, they're great. They're great to work with. So I think about this a lot, and I think at the end of the day, technique is secondary. And technique is important, and it can be part of the story. And I think the important thing about a cartoonist is realizing that every mark you make can affect or further or hurt the narrative. And so, but at the end of the day, I think so Clumsy by Jeffrey Brown, I think that's a brilliant work, and it's pretty much like Doodles. It's Doodles, and it's very diaristic comics. Although I guess they're very laborious for Jeffrey Brown at the time too. So there's like a talk I saw with Chris Ware where he thought he was joking about how much it sucks to make comics, and he was saying like he was really excited about meeting this kid Jeffrey Brown because he was like getting these zines from like the local comic shop by Jeffrey Brown, and he was like, this kid's enjoying himself. Like he's got this loose, fun style. And so, and he was like really fond of his work. So he like talked about him publicly and kind of helped him get known, where he's like, the kid you should pay attention to is Jeffrey Brown. And he's like, that's the cartoonist that's enjoying themselves. And then he met Jeffrey Brown, and Jeffrey Brown hates it and has a nightmare of a time making them. And it was like the same story.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it's whatever is true to the story. And I think like the thing I like about, I actually think like the nice thing about a guy like Charles Burns is I think he is appreciated by people outside of comics. Like, you know,
Right.
I mean, like
he must have mainstream. He must have, I mean, clearly he broke out.
yeah, I mean, you know, he like there's a reason the Believers had him do the covers for since the inception and still continue to have him do the covers because there's a look, there's an identity to Charles Burns's work that goes beyond just the skill. And I think that's the thing is like you can recognize Charles Burns easily. It's not it's like I don't confuse him with other artists who use the same technique.
Right. And he would
Klaus
be hard to reproduce. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true to his identity. So I think that's where it gets good. I think the second technique starts becoming generic and not true to your identity, which is anytime you talk about like value in art,
Yeah.
you get into abstracts, you know, but to me,
yeah, it becomes that whole coffee house conversation. But like,
yeah,
and I there's nothing wrong, I guess. Like if, like you hear about like comedians like comedians that don't really have a big audience, but other comedians love them because they see what, you know, they appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or musicians that like, you know, if you ask a musician like, you know, what's your favorite band? Odds are they're going to name bands that do not have mainstream appeal, not because they haven't heard of them, but because you kind of have to be a musician to get there, you know. And so there's nothing wrong with being an artist for artists. Like I'm not saying like, oh, but I guess then I would question like, I'm big on, and it's something that I feel like I almost want to do like maybe some videos on it. I'm big on motivation. Like what are you after here? And there's something about like when I'm making choices that I think are clever artist choices, or when I'm like putting out work that I think other artists will like this because, you know, they're artists, they'll get it. Or if I'm appreciating something because it's like, oh, this photographer, here's what you need to know about this photographer. They're actually blind. Like I'm making that up, but like that kind of thing, it's like, it becomes a thing where it's like, well, that can be cool, but it also can be trading a currency in like a secret club.
Yeah.
That, like feels icky to me. You know?
I agree with that. Yeah, so. I think I would agree with that. I think at the end of the day though, I think like you kind of have to make the best thing you can make. And it doesn't have to be like, I think the importance is having a story. And for some people, that story might be like texture and detail. Like that could be the story that you're telling in your art. Like maybe it's about juxtaposition of shapes and color. It's like there's some kind of narrative going on, and technique can be a part of that narrative, you know? Right. And it can further hurt the narrative. But it's like I'd hate to see oh my gosh, super effers. I'm forgetting who did that. James Kachalka. I would be so bored and bummed to see like a perfectly rendered James Kachalka. It just doesn't fit like what he does. Like what he does, it fits what he's doing with what he does. But I also like, I've always felt like I'd rather be the Pixies than like, you know, the mainstream band that like no real musician likes, but everybody else likes. Like I'd rather be the legit band that's making the stuff. I want to be making the deep cut jazz that like jazz musicians would dig.
Right.
And this is in theory. I don't think I've gotten there yet, but my point is like, I want to kind of do what Ware does, where it's like you get a mainstream enough audience, but the guys who do comics, like there's no way you can look at Chris Ware and go, I don't like it. That's like even at least on a technical level where it's just like, well, his type is amazing, or like the thought and like the composition's amazing. That's kind of what I aspire to. I think that's the right approach, honestly, but I also admit that's a little snobby and exclusionary. I don't think it has to be, though. I think it's great because it doesn't.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it gets into the motivation thing. Like, and only you know deep down, like, why? What are you chasing?
Yeah.
You know,
are you chasing mass appeal? And I think at the end of the day, we're all chasing mass appeal. It's just depending on what we want to sell to get there.
Well, yeah, and what path you want to take.
Yeah.
And I think even that isn't necessarily bad. Like, if you're just like, I want something that's popular. I want to make something that's popular, widely, broadly popular. I think that isn't so bad if you can articulate why. If it's because I want to make all the dollars, well, that's kind of weird and icky. But if it's because it's like, because I want to be an entertainer, I want people to have the joy of sitting and reading. Like I want maximum people. I don't want to just cater to like the little art house segment. Like I want everybody to love it. Like it's like, all right. I mean, that sounds noble enough to me. Like I mean, it's as noble as any.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like entertainment is a fine motivation. I think
like I want to make something fun. Now that's not me talking. Obviously, I'm doing more niche-y, but like I could imagine someone saying like, I want to do the popcorn equivalent of a comic where everybody's like, this is a blast. Is it brilliant? No. Is it like making me think about things in a different way? No. But it's fun. Like that's allowed.
And I think that serves its purpose. I think to me, I think there's a happy medium where but I think at the end of the day, it just ties down to authenticity, because we all know it's whether it's intentional or not, because somebody could be authentic and come across as really gimmicky. Like that could be authentic to them, right? Like you could have a comedian that like is a prop comedian and they authentically love prop comedy,
Right.
But like, that's not going to prevent other comedians from being like, like,
right.
But that's the thing is like, if you're a good example would be like you're Gallagher, you're making, billions of dollars, but you're never going to have the respect of your peers.
Yeah. Or
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Take the money. Like if that's what you were after, take it,
I mean, if that's what you
and that's not a bad day job.
Well, and that's what kind of, I don't know if this is true or not. I had kind of grown out of Garfield anyway, but something I had heard recently that I guess Jim Davis had long given up any kind of artistic vim or vigor for Garfield. It was just this monstrous cash cow where it was like, I can crank these out forever, whatever, and like, and if I don't know if that's true or not, because like I said, I'd already given up. Like Garfield, I grew out of when I was like in high school or something. But like if that was true, I'd be like, well, I'm kind of done with it. Like I don't want to. That feels gross.
I think what I would aspire to do in a scenario like that would be, I would hope that I would have as much integrity. I probably wouldn't, honestly, as a Calvin and Hobbes. But I think that's a much better route where it's like to just be like, if I keep going with this, it's going to get pretty gimmicky. So I'm just going to call it.
What's
or like to be able to have the guts to be like, I know you're offering me like millions of dollars, but I just kind of don't want my character on underwear. Whereas I would probably like, to me, I would draw the, like, I do agree if it would get stale and the story is no longer going to be good and you're building something great, I might have the integrity to bow out. But if somebody wants to like print my stuff on underwear, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's where my line is.
That's amazing. Like you would think there would be Hobbes stuffed toys.
Yep.
Like all like enough where if you gathered them all in one place, they would fill the Pacific Ocean. And
by now there would have been a movie. There would have been toys everywhere. There would have been, clothing. There would have been more than just the pirated sticker that douchebags have on their car.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a principled guy. Like he's walking, like I'm not saying, selling out is not having integrity, but he had decided for whatever particular reason that was not his vision for it.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't going to do it. And it probably meant literally millions and millions of dollars.
Oh, man.
I mean, there's no way the licensing for that wouldn't be astronomical. Like, it'd be crazy.
So Mama Soto just said, how do you fit Banksy into this? So I haven't followed Banksy recently, but I will say I'm actually a pretty big fan of Banksy. I think that my favorite stuff that, like I've mentioned this before too, I really like Dada, and I like movements that are kind of punk rock and sort of mess with people.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things, like a lot of people like the Banksy like tagging stuff that's like silhouettes with like a kid with a balloon, but the balloon's a bomb, and it's like that stuff actually is cool, but it doesn't like impress me that much. And I don't mean that in a negative. It's just like I've seen, growing up in the LA area, it's like you see stencil graffiti that's equally, if not more impressive than that. Although the places he managed to get to are pretty impressive. But my favorite stuff is when he'll go to like a gallery and just like hang his own paintings in the gallery, and they'll be up for like a week. Or he goes to like a history museum and puts like a diorama of like when the rats took over, and it looks really official. It has like a plaque, and that stays up for like, I think it was like 3 months. I like that kind of stuff a lot. I actually think it's great. And I think that he's actually a pretty good example of like being able to kind of retain some integrity, even though you're gigantic. I think it's possible to do both. And I honestly think the only disservice is selling out. And the only thing I consider, I don't think selling is selling out, but I would say there are some things for some people that would be clearly selling their soul. And I think that's like a line for each artist to kind of do. But like, I would almost think of it as like Chris Cornell's hip hop album. I don't think was really authentic. You hear it and it just doesn't sound authentic. And it's kind of a mark on like an otherwise like pretty impressive musical record, However, would I, were I offered like boatloads of money, do a terrible hip hop album? I don't know. I would hope not, but I don't know,
Right. I mean, it's so hard to know. Like if, I mean, that's that thing of like, if the money was actually sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
But then again, like you don't have it now. You're doing fine. Maybe if you're desperate.
Yeah. But I think it's good to retain whatever integrity you have. I think Charles Schultz is another example of like somebody who I don't think sold out. No. But also was like very heavily profitable.
Oh yeah.
And had his stuff marketed everywhere. And that's what Calvin and Hobbes could have been, like in the sense of like greeting cards, everything,
Totally. Oh my God. Can you imagine? Just picture it. Calvin and Hobbes Christmas special.
Yeah.
Like a little I mean, that'd be crazy.
I will say there's a part of me that's glad he didn't, though. Like, I think in a weird way, it does preserve the beauty of the comic, because it's like when I think of Calvin and Hobbes, it's nothing more than what it is. Like, I don't, well, unfortunately, except for that pirated thing, but I can kind of see where he was thinking that might actually spoil it. But at the same time, like, that's his line for integrity. I don't know if I would have an issue with that. And I think that's like, but I definitely think there is value to doing art that's trying to say something that's beyond commerce. And I think a lot of it's also just your art identity. And like, I think that's what appeals to me the most. But I will say Black Hole is not only impressive because of the amazing style of it. It is an incredibly creepy, unsettling story. And I feel like it actually reaches peaks of horror that I have not experienced in a horror comic before. Yeah. Like I said in the IRS thing, how many comics show you somebody kissing a mouth on a second mouth on a neck?
Like, it's almost like Cronenberg-y or something. Like,
it totally is.
Totally. Supposedly they're going to make a movie out of it, which is hard for me to even picture. Like, and maybe it's because it's so connected to Burns's art style.
Yeah, but I also like get this. That's the thing is like I also kind of think good for Charles Burns if they're making that. Like that's the thing is like I don't know if that's selling out to like have a movie option, because I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, good for them to get some money. Like
whatever. I mean,
probably made next to nothing on that book.
It
for 10 years of work.
Turns out like if it like if they did a high school sitcom based on Black Hole, I would probably be saying like, well, that feels like selling out. Like that is, that's with like a laugh track and all that. Like, I mean, that would be like really bad, but
it could be almost like hilariously meta though.
It could be if they did it, but I guess there's an element of, I don't know, this gets into a thing of like, you know, does art still belong to the artist even after it's gotten big? Like one of the things that, as a Star Wars fan, one thing that's always been fascinating to me is this point where if something gets big enough, the audience feels like they're part or full owners.
Yeah.
And that you can't do anything to it without like the audience's buy-in. And there is a part of me, like when in this topic where like, I think I'm still very much like kind of the rebel arty artist, where it's like, no, the audience makes no demands on me, like on what I do with my thing. You know, this exists because of me. I have full say. You're the audience. You sit over there. I'm making the thing, and I will give it to you. Like that is very much like I have this old school, like I'm on top of the mountain. You're down there listening. You know, so part of me is like if Burns did want to, like, I'm going to make a sitcom out of Black Hole, or I'm going to make action figures, or, you know, whatever, or I'm going to do a terrible movie of it. Whatever, man, I guess it's his thing. You know, like, I mean, it's not what I want to see from it, but I think I prefer that to angry pen and inkers with torches outside his house saying, like, you can't do this. This is wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I also think like that I could see being adapted a lot easier than something like Jimmy Corrigan.
Yeah,
which like I'm so thankful, because I guess that Chris Ware has been approached multiple times about it, and he's just been like, no, it's just not a movie.
That's hard to even picture, like how that would.
It's just not. Yeah, I think that's that's my favorite thing about Chris Ware's stuff is like and actually I really do sincerely aim to get there. At some point, my goal with comics is to make comics that can only be comics. And that's a hard challenge, but I think like the best comics are at their peak when they're comics. Weirdly enough, I would almost say
I could buy into that.
Scott Pilgrim was kind of like that, and then it just had this phenomenal filmmaker do a good job of adapting it, and it worked. You know, so
good. Both the books and the movie.
Yeah.
And no, I think that is like I think a very worthy goal is to make
comics that would be a pain in the ass to adapt
in the medium that it's in. You know, like like a movie that can't be a book that can't be a movie, a comic that can't be that it can only really be that thing.
Well, I love this. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I hate to bail, but I have to bail. It's late.
Yeah, it's almost 1. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost 1. And what's cool is like because of everybody in the chats and just all this wonderful conversation, I just zoomed through the second to last panel. I'm tempted to keep going, but I also I want to keep the long run in mind and be able to have the wherewithal.
Soto, that's a really good example. Like J.K. Rowling can't do anything without fans going like, but. Yeah, it kind of turns me off. Like I feel like no, she's the artist, guys. What was the last book you wrote?
Even as much as I get annoyed with some of the later things that Lucas did, I still have to kind of respect the fact that he kind of made Star Wars. So and there's a lot of brilliant people who spiced it up and made it better. But at the end of the day, like if it weren't for Lucas, you wouldn't have Star Wars. So
I feel like I have to I try to remember both those things. I think what I love about Star Wars was actually more of a collaboration.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
But ultimately it's his circus. You know, and that's why it's like if he wants to sell to Disney, okay. If he wants to make the prequels, all right. You know, if he wants to make Anakin 12, okay. You know,
and one of the great things about a circus like that, like love it or hate it, at least the original creator is getting something out of it. You know what I mean? Like I do, you know, I think we do have to like as creatives like really support people who end up in positions like that where they can actually control their own property. Like I think that's enviable position that, you know, and then sell it out to Disney for billions. Like why? Who wouldn't want that?
I think a little admirable about that because
100%.
Yes, okay, billions of dollars, sure, but this really was the thing that defined him. To be willing to give it up for any amount of money
Oh, agreed.
Really shows that his identity isn't tied up in Star Wars, and I think that shows a lot of maturity.
I agree, and I'm glad he handed it over. My point is, like, wouldn't it be great if all creators could get there, where it's like you actually have so much creative control over your own properties and work that you could build a whole empire off of it, and then when you're ready to retire from it, you could sell it off for billions of dollars.
Yeah,
that's the way to go. Like, especially if you're doing like sci-fi or whatever. But you know, this has been a really cool discussion, and I want to continue it because I really like it. I am curious. I want to know what Ronnie thinks about Black Hole, because Ronnie Gunter is a huge Crimson Owl,
I would think he
huge
would
horror.
be into.
Yeah. So at some point, Ronnie, we're gonna have to get your opinion on Black Hole by Charles Burns, because I feel like that's like one of those pinnacle of horror comics, and it would be cool to.
It would be. Well, and I'm eager. I've got a book coming up on the way that I think Ronnie will be into. Maybe I'm going to read it first for him, but it's Monsters, the 20-year in the making. Are you familiar with that one?
Are you talking about My Favorite Thing is Monsters, or?
No, Barry Windsor Smith.
Oh.
35 years in the making. I'm sorry. I wanted to check the years. He was working on this. His Crazy Magnum Opus, 35 years he's been chipping away at this graphic novel, came out a week ago.
Isn't it sad that like something like Black Hole right now is, I think, out of print, like the main version of it?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird that you could spend, I mean, don't get me wrong, it went through multiple editions and was a success, I think. But can you imagine like spending 10, like, it's so interesting, the difference between novelists and and for cartoonists, like, and by cartoonists I mean like people who write and draw their own stuff. It is amazing, like the kind of difference between, because I have friends who write books, you know, and they'll be like, I spent like 2 years on this thing, and I'm like,
that'd be nice.
Welcome.
I still think I've said this on Artcasters. Like when I was deciding, like, well, what's going to be my new creative life? I was looking at I had an idea for a screenplay, 2 screenplays. I had a novel I've been chipping away at for 25 years, like not seriously, but like an idea I've been working on, or the comics. And I thought, well, the comics will be easiest, which I don't know because I'd never done one. And now I think about that all the goddamn time, because it's like I could have had 2 novels done by now. Like I could have this so much easier.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thanks for hopping on, Gary. Adam, it was fun to have you in the chats. Ronnie, Mama Soto.
Night Mama Soto, night Adam, night Ronnie.
Yeah. It was fun.
Ronnie, if you have not read Black Hole, it would be a good one for you guys to review on your show.
Oh, dude. Yes, 100%. I want to see when you get to the page with the neck mouth kiss.
Oh yes,
just how much horror that made you feel, because I haven't met one person who got through that panel sequence without being like, ugh.
That's pretty weird. Weird.
So bad. All right. Well, thanks guys, and probably try to do later today on Artcasters. We are going to be joined. Let's see. Sorry,
who's the guest? Yes. Sneak preview.
Russ Leach, which is pretty awesome because he just, he released Only Death Can Save Us, and it'll be fun. And I think the topic's going to be like floppies versus graphic novels, which will be always apropos and good. And yeah, so feel free to join us there. And then I might end up doing a live stream then too. So who knows? But thanks to everybody in the Night Gang. It's not Night Guys, Mama Soto. It's Night Gang. That's right. Okay. And thanks, Gary, again. Have a good day.
You too. I'm going to go play Adventures in the Magic Kingdom.
Oh my gosh, I want to kind of check that out as well. All right. See you guys.
Talk to you later.